Thanks for being here, folks. I'm going to just turn it over here to Dr. Stumbo.
Check. There we go. Am I on? Awesome. Well, thank you. I realize that there's competing interests right now for your time, like lunch, but bless you, and we'll keep this moving for your sake. But I'm honored that you would have curiosity and stick around. What a sweet morning it's been, starting in the morning downtown on Maple Street. What a lovely service there, and Gert on the organ, and Bonnie leading the singing, and I got to try out my message over there, and then forgot where I was by the time I got over here. You know, it's a long drive from Maple Street over here. You know, so well, bless you. We are on an adventure as the Christian Missionary Alliance National Office, and thank you for your interest in that adventure. I would hope that some of you, as a result of this, would have some prayer support for us. Somebody might choose to give financially, and at minimum, you'll be able to understand, why did they move from Colorado to Ohio? By the way, can I just say this? Ohio has low self-esteem, and we shouldn't. The reason I say that, I bet 50 people have said to our staff and to Joanna and I, "You moved from Colorado here? Why?" Well, it's a great opportunity for us to tell them why, but hey, Ohio is a great place to live. We've been here 3 years now this month, and Joanna and I are truly enjoying. Of course, Joanna's a kid born in Worcester and graduated from Newark High School, so she came back home. I'm a Minnesota guy who realized that this is a great place to live as well. So the journey that we're on is called Project Reimagine. We are reimagining what it is for the church in the United States today to position itself in a different manner. And let me explain that, what that means and looks like. Did this have an on-off button, or am I? Oh, there you go. Did you do that, or did I do that, Austin? You did that? Well, every time I point and shoot. Okay. Oh, it actually went this time. Okay, so we're on. I'm on. So we're imagining a world intrigued by Jesus. In fact, we believe the world is intrigued by Jesus, but they've often said no to the church. And so the church is often not positioned for people to easily see Jesus. Now, your church here is finding ways to be in the community and looking for more of those. I heard of a story of a guy who's ministering in the prisons here. But as a national office, we have not been positioned in a way for people to see Jesus, and I'll explain that in a moment. We believe it's time to reposition as those of us who are in offices like ourselves, to take an intentional step towards meaningful, impactful presence. If you've been in an Alliance Missionary Conference in the last 10 years here at the church, you probably heard that phrase, meaningful, impactful presence. So when we go into a place like Iraq, we can't come in with a missionary visa. We have to come in with English as a second language, or starting some business that they actually want in their country. And then from that platform, from that opportunity, we can then bring the gospel, but it has to be a meaningful reason to be there and have impact as the presence of Christ among them. And so we do so, all over the world. There's 5 countries that have outgrown the Christian Missionary Alliance U.S., that the C&MA is larger in 5 countries than we are in the United States. Philippines is one of those. We're working in South Asia with those young women and girls who are getting caught up in sex trafficking to have a meaningful, impactful presence to come in and start business skill training for them. Central Mexico, there's a region called the Circle of Silence where the drug cartels have dominated so heavily that evangelical Christianity is almost non-existent. But we have 4 or 5 church plants happening right there now in that Circle of Silence. And all those stories I told you earlier today, all this started for the Christian Missionary Alliance in New York City in the 1880s. When you got 2 pastors on staff with a muck thing going on. The Irish immigrants and Italian immigrants and all those immigrants were coming into New York City back in 1880s. And Dr. Simpson, our founder, was seeking to reach out to them. And so we're trying to do today, in a sense, where we started with Dr. Simpson. Imagining a movement where we move from a business park, every non-profit Christian organization that I know, denominations, mission organizations, evangelist organizations, 200 of them are in Colorado Springs. Every one of them is operating out of a business park, out of a piece of property where you're trespassing if you go on that property unless you have business being there. Some of them are operating behind security fences, security guards, security gates, but we're operating in isolation. Imagine moving from a business park to the marketplace, to like where people are. In fact, if you look at Acts chapter 2, you're going to discover that after Pentecost, the church starts meeting right away in the temple courts. Remember the courts we just talked about that Jesus had cleared out 40 days earlier? Now the church has that as their meeting place. And then when it gets dark or they get hungry, they go from house to house. But the church, the first meeting place of the church was in the temple courts where they were preaching in public, singing in public, praying in public, because that was a public gathering place, Solomon's colonnade. Imagine going from isolation to intersection. I'll not comment on all these right now. From being sheltered in the business park to being present in a community. From being monocultural, the Christian Missionary Alliance is 50% non-Anglo in the United States. 200 Spanish-speaking churches, 100 Vietnamese churches, 100 Hmong churches, 100 Chinese churches, Cambodian, et cetera, et cetera. 37 languages in the United States, Christian Missionary Alliance today, worshiping Jesus. But our office in Colorado Springs was very monocultural. We weren't representing the languages and the broader Alliance family from Colorado Springs. So moving from monocultural to multicultural. Moving from a budget expense, we're the 140-year-old parent who could afford our own building, but still couldn't pay for the light bill and the heating bill. Thank you for your giving the Great Commission Fund. I meant that when I said that today. You've been very generous year after year, but I have to tell you that a tiny little bit out of every gift you've given the Great Commission Fund is paid for our heat and for our lights at the office. Well, that's okay, but after 140 years, don't you think that our asset should be good enough to pay for our own expenses? And we don't have to take that out of the Great Commission Fund, so we're trying to reposition the asset so that in such a way that it generates enough income so that more of your giving to missions goes straight to where you want it to go to. So from budget expense to budget income. So this is when we talk about a repositioning and a reposturing of ourselves. We're talking about this thing called Alliance Place. That yes, we're trying to build a building. We can't get around it. We can't have offices outdoors in Ohio. It's just not going to work. But it's more than a building. It's a model for changing the posture of church engagement in society, both on the local level and around the world. So we've been at this now for 3 years, and I'll show you some of the progress we made. But more and more, like the district office in Western Pennsylvania that was in a standalone building by themselves now has just sold that office to the Christian Missionary Alliance, and they moved to Butler. They are going to move to Butler, PA, and they bought a former doctor's office that's got a leased out second floor to a hospice administrative group, and they'll occupy the first floor. $50,000 a year will come in for their building so that they don't have to use their district funds to pay for the building. And they now are intersecting with people from the public as they come to work. So that would be one smaller example. Churches beginning to look at how do we engage more with our community. When I said what we were doing to other denominational presidents, Joanne and I get to meet with the heads of like the Evangelical Free and the Nazarene and the Assembly of God and all these great denominations, including some that you've never heard of, like the Seventh-day Baptist. One a good friend is a Seventh-day Baptist denominational president. And so we get together every year. When I first introduced this to what we were doing to them, you thought everybody's shoes were untied or something. They were all just looking down at their feet. Because I'm challenging the way not all Christian organizations are officing right now. Get out of our bubble, I'm saying, and let's engage with the community. That was year 1. Year 2, same song, second verse. They wouldn't even look me in the eye. Year 3, this last year, finally one of the guys, I won't name the denomination, but one of the guys says to me, we're not using all of our building. We've got some extra capacity in there, and we've got new immigrants walking by our building every day. Well, I knew he did because I've been in that area a lot, and I've seen those immigrants. Some of them are from the least reached peoples on earth, and they're walking right by denominational headquarters that are sending missionaries over to that part of the world, but they won't even open their door So after 3 years, he finally said, maybe we should take a different look at what we're doing. So I believe that God has chosen to use the Alliance to begin a conversation, not just for the Alliance, but for all of evangelical Christianity in America. And so we purchased, in 4 different property purchases, we purchased 14 acres of property in Reynoldsburg, not in Hilliard. I'm still learning where I live and where things are, but to develop a property that would have community interaction. Yes, we need to have our offices, but this property that we bought in Reynoldsburg is 1 block outside of the city of Columbus. So just, across the street is Columbus. And this property they called their gateway because it's the first block coming into Reynoldsburg. But the Kmart had been closed for years. Drug trade was going on in the alley behind the Kmart. Overnight truckers were parking in front of the Kmart with prostitutes coming at night. Violence was taking place in the area. And storage units were going to buy the Kmart. And another fast food place was going to go in on the corner. There's already McDonald's and a Taco Bell, and another fast food place is going to come in the corner. And their prime intersection, what they called their gateway, was going to be storage units and fast food places. And so you can love a city or hate a city for this, but they rezoned the whole thing so that it couldn't be drive-through and it couldn't be storage unit, but it could be office, restaurant, a hotel, convention center, meeting rooms, church. It could be anything housing, it could be anything that we would want to do with it. And so they've begun to become a great partner. Now, we need more people joining us in this. This is one of those things that, as president, I don't want to be the lead story. The lead story is what we did this morning. The Bible and the telling of our missional advance. We're about Jesus taking his message to the world. But this is like for the core of the Alliance family who would stay after an extra 45 minutes. this is, so we do need more involvement and engagement. Some of these goals have changed. I'm sorry, I didn't realize they sent the old PowerPoint. We just in the last meeting of the board, just a couple weeks ago, have said, we think we've overstretched on the size of that building, because since we designed the building, and what you see if you picked up one of those flyers, or Joanna will be standing in the back with one as well. We think we overstretched. Since we designed the building, Intel has announced they're coming into Columbus. You've heard that little news. Concrete prices have gone up 50% just because of Intel. We've had good, faithful results of giving from the Alliance family, but there have been a couple of major disappointments. We thought we might get a grants kind of thing, and that so far has fallen through. And so we've said we think we can do the same thing for less. So rather than, we cut the build, we're right now redesigning the building to be about half the size. And so let me just say, here's what the original design looked like of a large building with a parking structure behind. We're not going to need the parking structure, and that one Alliance place has just gotten smaller. And that building, pretty beautiful and great, but we're scaling it back, where our office would be in the same place as meeting rooms. And so I just flew through those pictures because it won't be quite as grandiose as that, and I don't want to overestablish. But what we were trying to show was this intersection where as we come to the office, there'd be a coffee shop, there'd be playground area, there'd be meeting rooms for the city, for the community to be able to come and for us to have natural interaction. So here's the property. That's the old Kmart, that large block right there. Well, you can identify a Kmart. They all look the same. I don't need to explain what a Kmart looks like. That's on Highway 40. That's the first paved road in America, national highway, 30,000 cars a day that goes right out 1/2 mile to 270. The other intersection, going at the bottom of your screen, is Bryce Road, 16,000 cars a day that goes right to 70, 1/2 mile. So this is why it's such a prime intersection for them. It's the first block into their city. By the way, they called it their gateway because of how run down it was. The locals started to call it the armpit of Reynoldsburg. And so the state of Ohio paid us $1 million to buy the Kmart and tear it down. It was a Jobs Ohio grant. Our great state incentivizes out-of-state groups to bring jobs into the state. And so we received $1 million, especially if you're redeveloping a property like this old Kmart. So no strings attached for some governmental thing other than that we had to tear down the Kmart. And so that is what we've done. We had, the city asked us to throw a party, and when the demolition day was, and so that's how it looks now, or after the Kmart was gone. Now, in God's kindness, there was a building vacated by COVID in the backyard of the Kmart. A business owner who had a call center said to his team on Saturday, don't come back on Monday because you're going to start working from home during COVID. And I'm moving back to California. And so that building, what color is that, honey? Tan-ish building, the 2-story with the cars around it. That's our temporary office. We were in 58,000 square feet in Colorado Springs. That's 13,000 square feet. So we're pretty, yeah, I cry too sometimes in that one. But we're pretty cozy. But how sweet of God that in the backyard of the Kmart, there was a spot for us to be able to set up shop and to begin to build the relationships. The rest of the 14 acres is that strip mall. So we now own that big rectangle, and that strip mall is providing lease income for us. That's now part of this taking care of paying for our bills through our asset. And it's beginning to give us some good relationships with the neighbors. The end unit is where the library is right now for Reynoldsburg, because right next door, they're building a brand new City of Columbus state-of-the-art library. So while it was getting built, they moved all their books into our building. And soon that is, they'll move into their library. And I just got a request this week that could our French African immigrant ministry use that for their English as a second language classes and for their immigrant services kinds of things. Well, we didn't know when we were touring around to visit different properties that God was going to bring people from all over the world to this region. We did know that there was already 50,000 Nepali Bhutanese living in the region. And so we are in a mix of a cultural, hopefully not collision, but infusion of different peoples from all over the world coming together, and we're right in the middle of it. We took the step of faith and did a groundbreaking this last summer after council. And we've paid for all of those things already. All that land is paid for. The strip mall is paid for. By the way, it came with a bonus McDonald's. Your denomination not only bought a Kmart, we bought a McDonald's. No, we didn't buy the fryer and the building, but the land underneath it. So there's $45,000 a year from that land lease that's now coming to the, so you see how we're putting these pieces together. So it changes us not only missionally, but changes us financially in the future. And so we're just trying to take these future steps towards greater gospel impact. I said to our staff one day, I want those of us who oversee the mission to be on the mission as we come to work. See, we had that lovely place in Colorado Springs, 58,000 square feet in the business park, but for 30 years, we never saw a non-Christian on our property unless the air conditioner repairman got lost on his way to the roof, But we didn't have to engage Monday to Friday, 8 to 5 with the non-Christian world. Well, who are we becoming by what we're repeatedly doing? That's an important leadership principle. Who are we becoming by what we're repeatedly doing? And by coming to the office Monday to Friday, 8 to 5 for 30 years, were we becoming more evangelistic? Were we becoming more missional by being in that business park? No. And so we're trying to upend the model. But it's expensive to do so. It's been a challenge. The city has worked really well with us, and I'm proud of how the staff has handled the transition. And yes, now we are more racially diverse. About half the staff moved, about a quarter of them retired, and others were easily able to find jobs in Colorado Springs with other nonprofits. And they went to work with groups like Compassion or other groups like that. So nobody got lost in the transition. Everybody that's moved, I've been so proud of them. But then that gave us an opportunity to hire more people. And our office, I think, now speaks a dozen languages. And it's just a different place. And we're learning to work together interculturally, which is actually really good for us. So our hope is that every Alliance person would buy 1 square foot of that property. Of that building. What's commercial building costs these days is now $400 to build a square foot. That's expensive. It's gone up, but it will not be an opulent building. We don't do opulence in the Alliance, but it will be an excellent building, and to have all the proper ADA and all the investing for the long term. So that would be a challenge if you take us up on that. For some of you, that'd be a stretch. And so we've got people giving $20 a month in an automated, gift. And for others, that's way too small of an ask. This idea came, I was speaking at Big Sandy Camp in northern Minnesota, and I gave this presentation, and a guy, but we didn't have any like number thing on it yet. And a guy said to me, how much is it a square foot? And I said, about $400. He said, I think I can get you 10 square feet. And so he sent us a check for $4,000. And that's when it began to trigger in me, okay, it's a multi-million-dollar project. I can't even give you a number right now because we're doing the redesign, but we probably have to raise $20 million more. Everything that's been paid for, the move, the land, the strip mall, all of that's been paid for, the architectural designs, and we've also done the groundwork. Right now, you can get online on our Reimagine website, and there's a live feed camera going back and forth on that 40-acre property, a 14-acre property, and you can see how the dirt's been stirred up, and there's big trucks out there, so that all that unglamorous site work of sewer lines and water lines and all that's done and paid for. But now we're raising money for the building itself, and so that's where the $400 a square feet comes in. And I'm going to skip through this. So we believe that by this square footage thing that we'll send more missionaries, have greater engagement, plant more churches, because it all feeds to this all of Jesus for all the world kind of vision that we have. And I'm curious what kind of questions this would create among you. What is this? It got adjusted because we're now stepping back. But I'll answer it this way. From the time we say go on the building, it's about a 16 to 18-month process to build a building to completion, yes. So when can we say go? Well, we're raising more money, and our board, we're doing this redesign, and our board is meeting on a regular basis. So it is becoming clear that it won't be done while I'm president, because I'm finishing in August of 2025. That's when we have a new president come, because you can't do 4 terms in the Christian Missionary Alliance, and I'm not changing the Constitution. But this was never for us or for me anyway. This is for the next generation. The next generation doesn't understand the church of the business park that's living in isolation. The next generation is looking for a church that knows how to engage in the community. And so it was for the next generation anyway that we were doing this. But thank you for the question. Yeah, please.
Would you go over again the venues, proposed venues through which you contact the non-church world?
Yes. We know that one need in the city is meeting room space. So just simply, you want to have a birthday party, you want to have a quinceañera, you want to have a meeting for your teachers association or whatever. Well, the library's got a couple. Panera, you're out in public, but there's just not much meeting room space. So in the redesign, we hope to have probably 6 rooms that would range from small, for just like a small group study, to 200 for some big training event for some group. Have a kitchen that's sufficient so we believe that, and then we won't have our own chapel anymore. So we have a weekly chapel service as a national office every Thursday morning. If you're ever in Columbus on a Thursday, come join our chapel. I'm serious about that. But we have a chapel, but we won't have our own. Now we'll use that big meeting room. So we have to come and we'll, intersect with the community. So meeting room space is one. Second is coffee shop. We've had our own coffee pot for a long time, but this will be and we'll own and operate the coffee shop so that it's kind of our front door, our welcome center. And we know that in our city, there's a tiny little Caribou Coffee, but it's mainly just a drive-through, and there's a tiny little list, but it's mainly just a drive-through. And we may not even get to have a drive-through, but we're going to have a large sit-down, hangout kind of coffee shop, and we expect that there'll be lots of meetings and interactions taking place there. So that's a second. Third, there will be play area and plaza area for just, families to hang out, and this next to the coffee shop, and just kind of a linger and mingle kind of area. The Nepalese in particular are very social, and and many societies are very public in their social engagements, so provide a social place and an outdoor. Above the coffee shop, original plan, and we hope it gets kept in, was a outdoor second floor seating area, so that on a nice evening, and have some reception or so. So those are some of the key ones. We hope eventually on the extra land that we don't need that there will be housing. That would be a huge benefit to the city. The number one need of Columbus is housing, especially with Intel coming in. And two, it would provide new neighbors for us. And I would love for some of those houses to be occupied by retired missionaries or pastors, and we give them $100 a month of free coffee. So if they're coming over to just, be present in the coffee shop, these are some of the kinds of engagement opportunities that we have. Yeah, please.
How was it that you would ever pick Ohio?
Yeah, I'm thrilled that your high self-esteem would cause you to ask that. I love the question. So here's the story. When I asked our leadership team, are we officed in the right manner? And they said, no, we have to reposition ourselves to engage the public. Then I asked the second question, are we officed in the right city? And that's when they said, well, the Colorado Springs Airport has never become what they claimed it was going to become. And we don't have racial diversity in our city, so our staff doesn't reflect the city. And Colorado Springs housing had become the 5th most expensive in the nation. Colorado's housing had. You got California, you got New York, Colorado was number 5 on that list. So housing's gone up everywhere, but Colorado Springs had a 6-digit head start on Ohio. So we started to look. A firm did this for us for free because they were excited about what we were doing. And so there were 17 cities in the United States that met the 3 criteria of a top 100 airport, greater racial diversity, and lower cost of living than Colorado Springs. Well, 17 cities was too many to research, so we put the map of the Christian Missionary Alliance over the top of those cities, and that reduced it to Indianapolis, Cleveland, and Columbus as the 3 cities that had a top 100 airport, greater racial diversity, lower cost of living, and closer proximity to the Alliance family. Now, we couldn't be closer to everybody because obviously we used to be closer to California, but I could drive in 9 hours, one day's drive, to 107 Alliance churches from Colorado Springs. From Columbus, in a 9-hour drive, we can drive to 760 Alliance churches. So we're with the Alliance people more for less money. We drove here this morning, didn't even need a hotel room. So in the past, we'd have to take these 10-day trips out of Colorado, spend all this time in hotels, because we're going to visit one church, well, then you might as well do this and this and this while you're doing so. So we are spending less money to be with people more often, and our events have all doubled in size because now it's just easier to get to us. So the things that we do and that we host have just had a better connectivity as well. So why Ohio? It was in that criteria, and Columbus because we found the Kmart and felt like that was the property. And it's proved to be a wonderful city for us. The airport is excellent. The diversity is fascinating. The Reynoldsburg has worked with us as a community very well. We're all volunteering as a staff in the city, like at their city events. When the mayor told me 10 days ago, every once in a while somebody complains about me letting a group like you, they see that, well, what he's saying is, we are not pro-gay, and we are not pro-abortion, and we're not pro-stuff that, And so when I get some, now he's not necessarily a follower of Christ. I don't know what his faith background is. He's kind of a mystery to me, but he's a good mayor, and he's a savvy leader, and he says, when I get somebody who complains about me letting you into town, I just say, have you been to our community festival? It's all of those people that are volunteering. You're not volunteering, but they're volunteering. So we've been engaging in the community at the food pantry, at the LifeWise ministry in churches, at the community festivals, that kind of thing. So we're in the community in that way. So anyway, Columbus has turned out to be a great place for us. One or two other questions? Yeah.
You talked about the crime in that area.
Yeah.
Prior to.
Right.
Has that all dwindled, or do you still see?
Well, when we tore down the Kmart, we ruined the drug traffic and the prostitution access. When the police came for that demo day, they just came to help us out. Hey, do you need any assistance? We know you got a big crowd coming. We said, well, thanks for coming. Then they started reminiscing, and they said, we're really grateful that you're here. We've got a lot of memories in this property, not good ones. Do you remember when you were strangled over in the corner? The one guy says the other corner. So I'm not saying that everything is cleaned up. I mean, we still live or working in a tougher part of town. Our cars got broken into one day, but that's just one day in a couple of years. It's definitely better. It still has, room to improve.
I know we've been paying for things as we go.
Yeah.
The building, how much money is raised toward the building at this point, either raised or pledged?
Right. Thank you. So we still have not used the $8 million that we received from the sale of the Colorado Springs property, and we have $2 million more cash on hand. So we've got $10 million cash on hand. But we expect this to be a $30 million construction. So when you add it all together of the relocation and the property and the strip mall and the architect fees and the site work, easy math is we've spent 20, we have 10 cash on hand and need to raise 20 more. Nothing coming from the Great Commission Fund and nothing coming from indebtedness. We just can't put an indebtedness on the Alliance for the future. That wouldn't help. That'd be kind of self-defeating. So we're basically 60% of the way there. 20, 10, 20. Yeah, please.
Is there a spot on the portal, the giving portal for the Alliance for giving to this that says the square footage,
Yeah.
contribute to the square footage?
If you, on our giving page, if you just ask for Project Reimagine, it'll populate right there. Or if you get on the, well, look at you. You know my PowerPoint better than I do there, Austin. Way to go. So that QR code would take you right there. Or, yeah.
I said, this is Willard after all.
That's right. Hilliard would have never known that, but Willard had it. Awesome. 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 These have been great questions. I appreciate your engagement. One more, and then.
On behalf of millions of people around the world, I want to thank you and Joanna for your leadership.
Bless you, sir. So let me close with this. We all inherited something in the faith. We have the gospel because somebody before us was faithful. Most of you were not here in Willard 50 years ago when somebody had the dream to plant a church here. But somebody had a vision, somebody had a dream, somebody wrote checks so that this property could be purchased before you even, some of you, not all of you, maybe some of you wrote the early checks, but for most of us, we walked into something that somebody else had already dreamt of and prayed about and paid for. Now, we've inherited it, and we try to make it better, and your property looks beautiful, and your building is well maintained, and you've got this extension site downtown, and so I celebrate this. But we cannot, no generation can just say, I'll use what I inherited and just sit on it. We have to ask the same question those who went before us asked and say, what's our investment for those who follow us? And those of us in the senior leadership of the Christian Mission Alliance at this moment in time have become convinced that our investment for the generation that follows us is this whole redesign of how, and repositioning of how an office would function. So do pray, and if God calls you to give, great, and no arm pressure. We just trust in God. First and foremost, give to your church, and then second of all, give to the Great Commission Fund. But a lot of people have capacity. This $20 million that's come in, maybe 1% of it, my best calculation, 1% of it was a shift in giving from the Great Commission Fund over. But 99% of it was just money that, hey, I believe in what you're doing, let's go for it. So we're not asking for a shift of funds, but this God will guide you. So this has been fun. Thank you. Grateful that you would stay, and let me pray for your church. Thank you for Christian Alliance. Thank you for those 50 years ago that had the vision to plant this church, and thank you for bringing leaders through the years. I heard some good names mentioned this morning, of those who've served in this place. And thank you for bringing the current leadership team that's here. And thank you for those who served as elders or the staff or volunteers keeping Sunday school and quizzing and all these things going. Thank you for their looking beyond these walls. I just ask for a season of harvest. Thank you for the 7 or 8 baptisms that are coming up next week. We celebrate that, and we pray for a season of harvest for this church, that souls would be saved, that the gospel would go forward. We pray that there would be increasing insight in how to have community impact and how to invest in lives. So bless this church, prosper this church, I pray, for the advancement of the name of Jesus in their Jerusalem, in their Judea, in their Samaria, as people have come into the region from other cultures and to the ends of the earth. May this place know a rich, joyful harvest and blessing.